Is your content getting crickets? Do you want more clicks, comments, shares, and responses? Well, then this episode's for you, right here, right now, On Air Brands.
You are now tuned in to the On Air Brands podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the On Air Brand Show. I am Todd Genatasio, along with my freezing cold co-host, Amber Thurman. Amber, what's going on?
What's up? I need to know if you guys can put in the comments and tell me whether or not when Todd said crickets, whether you heard crickets or whether it's just me and my farm. Because I was like, wait a minute, where are they at? Yeah, I love it. So crickets, we want to get rid of those. How are we going to do it?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are trying to build their audience, especially if you're watching / listening to this show, you are out there trying to build your audience and get people to eventually buy from you, right? And you should be publishing content, you should be putting things out. Do I have a Facebook group or just a page? Or are you running ads with content or sending emails? Wherever you're putting out content, you're not doing it just because you like the exercise of putting it out. Like, you're doing it because you want people paying attention and for them to take action. And a lot of people, especially getting started, will get a little disgruntled with themselves because they start putting out content, but there's no engagement. They're sending emails that don't get opened or clicked. They're posting in their Facebook group or on their Facebook page, and no one's commenting or liking it. And they just feel like, why am I even bothering to do this? And so today we're going to talk through, how to muscle through that initial stage, but how to increase the engagement, and how to have the proper mindset around building an audience, an engaged audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this because not that I know this from personal experience, but I really want to help all those people out there who get ready to make a Facebook post and then they call their friends and they're like, hey, in 10 minutes, I'm going to post something asking for comments. Can you please just comment on that for me? And then you're waiting for other people to follow because you think nobody wants to be the first person to comment. So let me just get somebody else rolling, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how to stop making that embarrassing call that says, hey, dude, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah. Or, how you have to log in and out of 5 different of your own side accounts to, get those first likes up,
I don't know what you're talking about, Todd.
That's one of the benefits of having multiple businesses is that, every time I post on Instagram, magically these 6 other accounts that happen to have my name on them are all also liking it.
I know, right? They say it takes an army. They never said that army needed to be more than you, right? Yeah. So I think it's really interesting because as you guys watch this episode, you're going to see a couple of what to do's that come from the side that says Todd and a couple of what not to do's that come from the side that says Amber. So just think do what Todd says and I'll be your what not to do example.
Well, but it's not even the what not to do is because what you do a great job of is being consistent and showing up. And what I've talked about in the past, I know Mike Hamm and I definitely talked about it on an episode where you have to mind the lurkers too, right? So it's not all about getting engagement because let's set some expectations, right? 1, from a visibility standpoint, and 2, from an engagement / response standpoint. So just basic generic statistics. Every industry is different. Every audience is different, blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, when you send out an email to your list, the industry average for opens is under 20% now. And the average click-through rate is under 2%. And when you're posting something on Facebook, the average reach of an organic post, meaning you don't put any ads behind it, is about 1%, give or take. And so that means if you have 1,000 fans on your Facebook page, I don't know, what's 1% of 1,000? 10, right? 10 people are just going to have it in their feed. Not even that 10 people are going to take the time to read it, but it's only going to load on the screen for 10 people. And that's one thing, is to just manage our own expectations of what is good engagement versus not good engagement. On Instagram, it's, because on Instagram, it's a big thing in the marketing industry to recognize phony accounts, right? Did this person buy 1 million followers, right? Because we see these accounts that have 1 million plus followers, hundreds of thousands of followers.
And no posts.
Right. And they have 50 likes. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how do you have 1 million followers and only 50 likes? Like either your content is really terrible, right? Or it's not real people following you. And so when we're looking at Instagram, it's like, okay, am I getting about a 1% quote engagement rate on that stuff, right? So that's just all to say, you can take the exact numbers with a grain of salt, but to say, don't feel discouraged if you're posting stuff and you don't see a lot of response right away. Is that it's also just not showing up to everybody. If you're not if you don't have a full-time person promoting and driving engagement to stuff, don't expect there to be a ton of engagement, especially when you're first starting off and first growing. So that's the first thing I want to do, manage those expectations.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because when I started, I know this is going to sound crazy, actually engaging with the people who follow me, right? When I got out of the mindset that we have been in this era for so long that everything can be done on social media, and I started actually having conversations with people, I would realize that they are seeing my content. And then there was this whole other reason that they weren't commenting. And that whole other reason was the solution that I could provide to them that was showing up in other areas. And so this is where what you talk about, Todd, is so powerful, that email list, that engagement, getting people on phone calls. I just did that amazing interview that we talked about with Matt Johnson on my show that came out a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And he was talking about how the jab, 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 right hook mentality that so many marketers have approached, which is a great mentality. When you do that on social media, it's not effective because the algorithms hold back your right hook. So you say, I'm jabbing, I'm jabbing, I'm jabbing. Where's that right hook? And then it doesn't actually see anyone. So taking it onto your email list where you can control who sees it and who doesn't is going to make all the difference.
Yeah. So, something that we want to avoid is the whole publish and pray approach, right? Where we just post something and then go away and cross our fingers and hope something happens. So just from a basic understanding, when you post something, you can't just rely on the algorithm. Who is it? George Bryant talks about relationships over algorithms, right? And so that's what really we want to do, is we want to be publishing content, but we're doing it in a way because we want to build a relationship with people. And when we build the relationship with our audience, they're going to seek out what we're doing and they're gonna want to engage with it, right? But it comes with first, just, is your content good enough, right? So my wife is somewhat famous in the teachergram world. She's got an online business. She's a fourth grade teacher now. She just switched from fifth grade, and she's got a really great online business as well. And she's in all these communities with other teacherpreneurs that they're called. And a lot of them will post and ask for help. Hey, I'm not getting any sales in my store. What can I do to get more sales? And they're looking for these tactics oh, well, if you optimize your title, you'll get more, that kind of stuff, which that does have an effect. But then when you go and look at their store, their products actually suck.
Yeah.
And it's it doesn't matter how optimized your content is or how many people see it, your product doesn't look good. It's not appealing. So the first thing is, are you a followable person? Are you putting out content that's worth following and worth engaging with, right? And so that comes from having a customer-centric mentality, right? Like you said, if you're just putting out right hooks, if you're just self-promotion, hey, here's my product, this is my product, what it does, talking about your product or your offers, then why am I really following you? Unless it's an e-commerce business where you just sell commodity type stuff where I'm looking for deals. But most of our listeners are not in that type of business. And so you need to be putting stuff out that makes it worth following, right? So are you being customer centric? Are you thinking about the stuff that people want, right? And we've done a bunch of episodes talking about what makes content valuable, right? It's timely, it's practical, it's relevant to your audience, it solves a problem, it helps guide them on their decision-making process, all that kind of stuff. So are you putting out quality, valuable content that people would be interested in if and when they see it, right? So that's step one, is making sure that you're putting out valuable stuff. Then two, is it reaching enough people? Right? So are we making good stuff, but then are enough people seeing it? And so when you publish something, this is where the power of an email list comes into play for social media marketing. And not a lot of people talk about it, but all the pros are doing it. And so when you really think of, you need to be building your email list so you have a direct connection. You're not relying on algorithms and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different reasons to build your email list that I won't get into. We'll talk just about engagement today. But by building up your email list, now you have a direct connection and communication with your audience. Now you can have these publishing outposts, right? And so pick one of them. You don't have to be everywhere, or you don't have to focus on new content on every channel, right? So if it's a Facebook group, if it's your Instagram profile, right, you post out some really great, valuable content. Now you go and email your list, right? Don't rely on the Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn algorithm to show everybody that hit the follow button, because it's not going to. Now is where you can go and hit your email list and say, hey, Amber, a lot of our audience is struggling with how to get engagement on their content. I just put some great tips on Instagram. Here's a link to go check out the post. Well, now you're hitting those people on your email list with some great content. You're giving them a directive. You're offering them value to click over, and you're driving proactively to your profiles and to that social content. And then once stuff gets comments or likes or shares, now we're starting to feed the algorithm what it wants, and we're showing the algorithm, this is good stuff. You should show it to more people, right? Let's just break down how algorithms work at a high level for all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google, everything. Their job is to show stuff to people that they want to see.
Yeah.
And if you post something on Instagram and Instagram shows it to an initial 15% of your followers, right? That's probably a high percentage, but whatever. It shows it to a small group of people and no one likes it. Why is Instagram going to then take it and show it to more people? Because Instagram doesn't want to show crappy content to people. People don't want to see crappy content. They're not going to hang out on Instagram if all they see is crappy content. And by getting initial engagement, if we can post it and then send an email out to our list and drive people and get some engagement on that right away, now we're telling the algorithm, whatever platform it is, hey, we just put out content that people are liking and commenting on. And so now the platform is going to look and say, this must be pretty good. Let's show it to more people. So that's number one, is not relying on the algorithm. Like, use your, put good stuff out and use the power of your email list to offer that value and send people over and drive engagement.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and something that's super important for people to understand. And so much of it, like we talked about this a little bit before when we were talking about building an email list, but so much of the lack of engagement doesn't always mean that they're not interested. Like, you could be putting out some super serious, like hard hitting stuff, and they just don't want to comment in a platform that is completely visible to everybody else.
Right.
Even if you're putting it in a private Facebook group, you might still have 500 or 600 people. If you're talking about somebody's deepest fears that they think they're going to be shamed for, which is so much of what we do. We sell to fears and pain points, regardless of what you're selling. Then asking somebody to comment about those in a group of 600 people is a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
When you go to your email list, they can respond and be like, hey, let's have a conversation. And it's a little bit more welcoming.
Yeah, that's a great point I wasn't even thinking of, is if it is a piece of content where, now another tip here is when you're posting stuff, put a call to action that, like, if you like this, like it. If if you found this interesting, like it. Or if you have a question, put segue into a question at the end and say, leave a comment. The thing that a lot of people get wrong is that, and us included, we used to do this a lot. Like you said, you can drive action in sales through like, fear-based or negative, like avoiding a fear, right? Like you're either avoiding pain or moving towards a problem. Or moving towards a solution. And if you're saying something like, what are you struggling with right now? Comment below and let me know. People don't want to reveal those struggles, maybe to you, or definitely not like to a group of other people, right? Like they could be slightly ashamed or embarrassed. So they might be mentally engaging and consuming your content, but they're not going to be commenting because they don't want to put themselves out there in that vulnerable type of way. So if you do want to do that kind of content, what we've seen work really well is by giving them options. Because another thing is, you think about this stuff all day, every day. You are the expert. You're putting out this content. It's what you do in your business. You know how to ask the questions. You know how to answer the questions. But most commonly, your ideal clients are not thinking about it as deeply or as intellectually as you are, and they can't articulate the problem in a way that when they're scrolling through the social media, oh, that's a question. I know the answer. Let me tell you. They haven't thought it through. And so where we've seen a lot better engagement on that kind of content is give a little value content and then say, do you feel most like 1, 2, or 3? And then that will help people who haven't thought through and been able to articulate their issue yet, where they pick out and they go, oh yeah, number 2, definitely me. Right. And, we have a health and wellness client. And so we've done that where it's like, are you struggling most with nutrition, exercise, mindset, or lifestyle? Right. And then people will start saying, like, if we just post and do some stuff and then say, what's your biggest struggle? There's crickets. But if we say, which one of these would be most helpful for you to learn more about? Mindset, exercise, nutrition, whatever. Then people will say like, oh man, I definitely want to learn more about number 2. Right. And by framing those things differently and giving them a choice, as opposed to giving them open-ended, like they have to think through and do something, right? We're going to get more engagement when we give them the easy option of, hey, pick 1, 2, or 3, as opposed to please take a couple minutes to think this through and give me information.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on a platform where people aren't taking a couple minutes to do anything.
Right. Exactly.
Like, I mean, first of all, like you said before, social media, if you're ever on a free platform and you think, how does this person make money? Well, you are how
right.
the person makes money, right? Like the more engaging your content is, the more they keep people on the platform, the more advertising dollars they get. So they don't want people looking at your post thinking for a couple of minutes. They want them scrolling. They want them engaging in different content. So I'm really excited for this. And I think that this is going to be such a great deep dive of conversation for somebody that has been through that cricket situation.
Yeah.
For that other person that says, hey, like, my business is going well. Yeah, I'm trying to grow my social media following, but I don't really care what people think. Like, why should they care about this?
Yeah, well, it's for a couple reasons. One, you want to build relationships with people, right? Because the more relationships you have, it's just like offline, right? The more people who know you and know what you do, the better, the more people are going to come to you to solve the problems that you solve. So you want to be known for something. And in order to be known, you have to be visible and you have to be putting out stuff that people are actually consuming and paying attention to so that they can categorize you in their brain for that problem or solution so that they're going to come back to you. Right. And the other thing is people don't want to buy stuff from strangers when it's something high ticket's not even the right word, because it doesn't have to be something that's $1 million, but something that's not a commodity off the shelf. Let me grab this. I'm at the supermarket and I need coffee. I'm grabbing this bag of Starbucks. But like the people need a relationship, or will do, all things even, relationships will win. Right. That's what it comes down to. And when you can have a relationship with someone where they're seeing you regularly, it will help to build that up. Right. And something that I've said before on the show too is, when they see you frequently and in different places, it actually strengthens the bond. And that's another great reason for having an email list and social media, because now they're seeing you in 2 different places, in their inbox, and they're clicking, and now they're seeing you on social. And the more, not to mention algorithmically, the more they engage with you on social media, the more social media will show them your content, right? So it's a virtuous cycle of getting the engagement will help get more engagement.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because, we talked just a minute ago about how we understand the problem better than the client does, because that's what we do. That's what we solve. Right. But I think what's really interesting, and I know I've experienced this, and I think that you have as well, is that client that just blows your mind because they explain the problem to you in a way that you've never thought of it before. And then it opens up this whole other clientele option for you, because we're all like, we internalize problems differently based upon who we are and what our experiences are. And so when we're marketing and we're putting together our products and solutions, we're doing that for the way we understand problems. The deeper your relationships are with your client base, the more you understand how they internalize their problems, which is really the important part of that equation, so that you can then solve it. So even if you're saying, you know what, I don't need more clients right now, I don't want more clients right now, you should always want to have a deeper relationship with your clientele to understand how they internalize their problems.
It's dig your well before you're thirsty. If you don't need clients today, are you ever going to need new clients in the future? And if so, do you want to be behind the 8 ball when that time comes where you're gasping for air? Or do you want to have a push button opportunity where you can send out an email to your list and say, hey, I just got 3 new slots opened up for X solution next month. If you're interested, hit reply and let me know, and we can see if you're a good fit. Now, all of a sudden, if you've never emailed your list, if you've never posted on social media, then when you send that, you're probably not going to get people that interested. But if you've been sending them valuable content that's relevant to the problem, you're positioned as an authority, you've developed that relationship, and you send that out, you're going to be able to scoop up a couple of clients pretty quickly off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then imagine how amazing it is when that client that, you know, because so many times we say, I've hit my max, you know, the trade-off of how much work it's going to take to continue to grow my business, you know, that's not where I want to go. That's not my definition of success, whatever it is. I've hit my max. And then we find that client that we're like, but I really want to work with you. And they're the ones that teaches us that we're nowhere near our max, right?
Yeah.
And then we get to go further and further and further. So we're going this deep in this just to let you guys know that even if you think you don't need this, you need this. So pay attention.
Yeah. And a lot of great tips that you'll be able to get also at the next PodMax event, which is August 27th, where we're going to have Caleb Silver, who's the editor-in-chief of Investopedia, talking about the podcast that they launched. So we're going to be able to ask him all about how they're building their community and engaged audience around a podcast and what it's doing for their business. And also Matt Faircloth from the DeRosa Group, who is a Bigger Pockets author. He's got a huge YouTube channel. He's got a great engaged audience. And so he's going to be giving tips on how to build your personal brand through digital content like this. So if you're interested, definitely check out podmax.co. Those are just the speakers. You also are going to get featured on 3 different podcasts, which is a great way for you to get your message out, to reach other people's audiences, siphon some of those people to start following you and your content that you're putting out, and build your engaged audience. So podmax.co to register for August 27th event. It's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of stuff like we're talking about here today. And what you just mentioned, Amber, also was asking questions to your audience. And that's a great way. If you have an engaged audience, being able to ask them what they're interested in or how they're experiencing things, that feedback loop that you only get when you have a relationship with your audience. And so when you develop that relationship, now you can ask them what they need, create products and offers that will help them, and then bring it right back to them and say, hey, we put this together to help solve your problem. So now you have a direct, you know, you're skipping the line of those old focus groups that cost tens of thousands of dollars for companies to run. You have your own focus group by building your engaged audience and having them pay attention. And that's just one of the things that I like to mix in. So for any sports fans out there, football and baseball, if you are a pitcher and you have and you're not Mariano Rivera, who had one pitch that was amazing, but every other pitcher has multiple pitches. And you have to be able to throw a fastball and an off-speed pitch, right? You can't just throw 99 miles an hour every pitch, because everyone in the major leagues can hit a fastball if they know it's coming, right? You need to be able to keep people off balance so that they're paying attention. So if every single time you post or every single time you send an email, it's about the one exact thing, or it's in one exact format every single time, like if every email you send says, check out my Instagram post, and then your email says one sentence and a link to your Instagram post. Well, sooner or later, what happens is people get this mentality of, it's called banner blindness, where you don't see like the content around the sidebars and pop-ups and stuff. But in email, we're like mentally unsubscribed from something, because even if the subject line is intriguing, if we think to ourselves, we know what's inside, we don't need to open it. And so we skip past that email, or we open it and don't read it, or we archive it right away, right? Like how many newsletters I'm subscribed to that I archive right away. I don't unsubscribe because I do want to see when these people are putting stuff out, but I don't always open it because it's just become repetitive, and I know what's going to be on the inside of this email. And so when we do things like switch up our pitch, we're throwing a fastball and then a curveball, we keep people on their toes where the subject line's intriguing and they're not quite sure what's going to be on the inside. They know they have to open to find out. And the same thing with social media. If you post the same thing every time, when they see your name in the first line, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm familiar. My brain knows what this is already. I don't need to keep reading it. So mixing up the content with stuff, like you said, asking them stuff, putting out these like little feedback loops is one of the great ways to do it.
Yeah. And on that point, Todd, it doesn't even matter if what you're doing is selling, right? Because I'm on an email list of somebody who sends out these Friday funnies, and they're hilarious, but they're always Friday funnies. And I get them. There's never a sales pitch in them. There's none of that. And it's gotten to the point now where I get them and I was like, okay, I don't need any funnies today, right? Like, like I get it, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure they're hilarious, but I just don't have time for this today, or I don't want to open this today. And so it's not even necessarily only getting that banner blindness when we think they're going to sell us.
Right.
It's when I don't need to open this because I know that what's in it is this. And if
Right.
you've created that situation, then it's time for you to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, what I was thinking when you were talking before is how amazing would it be to be able to be that person where when somebody gets an email from you, instead of saying, what's Todd trying to sell me today? It's what problem is Todd going to solve for me today? Because
Yep.
every single time you have insight that's valuable. Some of it may be mind-blowingly valuable. Some of it might be tips and tricks that you're like, oh, I haven't thought of it like that before. And some of it might be Friday funnies, right?
Yeah.
But you always solve a problem. So you don't ever have that, what's Todd trying to sell me today? And then when you do get that, hey, check out my course in there, it's like, oh, of course I will, because you're always solving my problems.
Right. Exactly. You're building up the equity in the relationship so that when you do have a product, they are going to sign up for it. Right. I mean,
absolutely.
It makes sense to position yourself that way. And so a couple tips for people to give you some practical takeaways here is for your email list, send some emails, if you 80-20 this out, this is also why I recommend sending at least one email every week, because you need to mix things up. If you want to do a sales promotion every month, well, then 1 out of 4 of your emails is going to be a sales promotion. So if you want to send one every month, you need 4 content emails every month, right? So you need to be sending a weekly content email. And then if you want to mix it up, have one of those emails is going to be content purely in the email itself. No links, no going else anywhere. You just open the email, you got good stuff right there. Then another week, you're going to send someone to an Instagram post that's got a quote card on it and some tips. And then another week, you're going to send someone to a video that you put on social media that is 2 minutes and answers something differently, right? So mixing up the format, the modality, if you will, mixing up if it's delivered in the emails or outside, right? And then the same thing like on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, like sometimes post graphics, sometimes post just text. Sometimes do, different platforms are different with the links, put the link in the comments, whatever, but just mix up the modalities that you're putting out. Sometimes do, 30 seconds, sometimes do 2-minute video. If you can get on camera, that would be great. So always kind of mixing up the formats of your content is going to be helpful, because it will keep people paying attention. People's brains are wired for novelty and to look for different things that are different. And so if it becomes too redundant, we stop paying attention. So you got to keep mixing it up from that level. And there's some tips on how to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And then I think another mistake that people make often is, especially in the podcasting space, is they assume that because their guest is X, right, that people are going to want to listen to it just because of who that person is. And we talk so much about the credibility that you can get, the credibility you can gain for your audience when you borrow the credibility of somebody that they know, like, trust, and respect. Here's the statement that blew my mind, though. I remember hearing from somebody once, nobody cares what your name is until they know what you can do for them. And I thought, wow. So when we send out those emails and we're saying, hey, I had Gary Vaynerchuk on my podcast, like, for somebody who doesn't know Gary's content, they're going to be like, great, like,
Right.
good for you.
Yeah.
And even for somebody who does, they're going to be like, sweet, good for you. Like, why should I listen?
Right.
So thinking that you're going to get that credibility from name association alone, I see that mistake so many times.
Yeah. Name association is very little. It's a very interesting thing. And I ran pretty large scale events here with some very famous speakers, Gary Vaynerchuk being one of them, where we had thousands of attendees, and we would send out promo emails. We actually, this year's event is in October, propelify.com if you guys are interested. But we had a conversation this week about like what emails have worked in the past and what doesn't, and what are our best channels. And the emails that promote speakers that have that celebrity name, globally recognized author, etc., they drive less tickets than the 21-year-old, the 21-year-old from India who made his first million by 18 and 100 million by 21. Because when you send an email that says, we're having celebrity X coming, she's awesome, you click here to get your tickets, that's not as compelling as like this guy. I can't remember his name, nor was I even able to pronounce it. But like, hey, this guy's incredible. By the time he was 18, he made his first $1 million, and then he turned it into a giant media company in India that was worth $100 million, and he sold it. And then with the $100 million, here's what he turned these things into. And if you want to learn the lessons of someone who went through those in a struggle living in a country like India versus America, like what kind of lessons do you think you'd be able to learn from him? You got to be here to see this. That becomes much more compelling, and we get more people interested because of that. However, if we didn't also have the name brand celebrity, would we get as many people interested? Probably not, because it lifts the credibility of the event, but it doesn't drive registrations, right? And same thing goes for podcast guests and stuff like that. It will, by having those names on your website and on your show description, whatever, like it will raise the credibility overall, but that specific thing won't exactly drive drive a difference in your business. It's all these different things. Maybe I've been searching for a word, Amber. Maybe you can help me with this.
Oh, okay. I'm ready for this.
What would the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts be? Right? Like death by 1,000 cuts is the negative. We don't want to die by 1,000 cuts. What is like the live a glorious life by 1,000 pennies? Or you know what I mean? Like what would, that?
So I'm thinking of like rising, right? And I'm thinking of pieces of paper. So like one like I don't know.
Rising pieces of paper lift all ships. That's what they say.
One, what's the thickness of a piece of paper? I don't know. Like this is my attorney brain going, right? But no, I hear you for sure. Like it's so when we're creating content and we're sending that out, whether it's by email, whether we're sending videos, whether we're doing any of this, like that should be top of mind. Why would the person we're sending this to want to engage in this? And then from there, going down into the rabbit hole of who it is and the name association and all of that. But I know when I first started my podcast, I like everybody else, we did a ton of things wrong, right? If you started your business and you did all the things right, I call bullshit. So it just doesn't happen.
This is also interesting. If you started your first business,
yes,
and didn't do it, because a lot of times what I've been noticing lately are these people who are coming out and having, they did $10 million in their first year, or they, $1 million in the first 6 months, blah, blah, blah. But those people, this is their 7th business, or, this is their 4th podcast, or whatever it is. Like they've had other runs, they've made the mistakes and failures before, or they're part of a team and surrounded themselves with the people who have made those mistakes and have been there before.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I did very, very, very wrong when I first started my podcast was my episode release images was like me, my guest name and their title, and no other information about the episode, right? There wasn't a blurb. And I was like, why isn't anybody listening to my podcast? Like, don't they know who this is? First of all, no, they don't, because turns out the world's a big place. Right. In case you didn't know. But it's just so interesting because we have this, just hit my mic. We have this mentality of, okay, I put it out there. And just like on the prior episode, on the Podmax podcast, where they were talking about the if you build it, they will come segment, or will they, right? Like just because you put it out there doesn't mean people are going to respond. So think about that when you put out content.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last tip that I want to give here too, and there's a million other tips that we could get into.
So many.
But the last tip I want to get into is not just publishing and praying, right? But once you publish, you have to go out and engage on other people's content, right? Like there's a lot of reasons for this. One, I will just say my woo-woo self will tell you that by putting the energy out in the world and sending and engaging on other content, the universe will reward you tenfold. So if you go out and do unto others as you want unto you. If you want people commenting and engaging on your content, go and engage on other people's content, right? So find out, if this is Instagram, Facebook, wherever, LinkedIn, find people who are in your target audience. Who are they following? Who are the big names, thought leaders, brands, etc.? Now go to those pages and start commenting thoughtfully, reply to other people's comments thoughtfully, and that will start doing a couple things. One, it puts your goodwill out into the universe. Two, it gets your account visible, right? So if you're commenting on other Instagram posts, your handle is going to be in the comments, and that can help. If you're putting a thoughtful comment, that can help drive people from the comment over to your profile, right? And the more people that click over to your profile, the more Instagram's going to start showing your stuff to other people, etc. Right? So you're going to be doing that. You're going to be building a relationship with the people that you are commenting on, right? So going out and just engaging in the world, right? Do unto others content as you want done unto your content.
And in case you guys missed it, and I'm not saying this facetiously, I mean it. In case you missed how many times Todd said the word thoughtfully, that's the most important part of that whole message. Like,
yes.
You can't go out there and just say, hey, this is cool.
Yeah.
You can't go out there and just like, I liked your stuff. Do you know how many people like a piece of content? Like, if you really resonated with it, make a comment. This is where that vulnerability comes in. Like, if you're not willing to be real about what content meant to you, how can you honestly expect your audience to be real on your stuff?
Yeah.
And then with that being said, when somebody comments on your stuff, engage with them. Like, that's your opening to reply back. Isn't it crazy how many people you see that have like comments on their stuff and there's no replies to it? And you're like, man. Yeah. So
and also, you mentioned something before that I want to throw it in as this proactiveness of engagement is that you said something like, oh, you call up a friend and say, hey, I'm going to post, can you go comment on it? And there's something called engagement pods, which I'm not going to get into here. I'm not in any, I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's basically like a group of people who are like quid pro quo, right? Like, hey, when I post something, I'm going to drop my link in here. Can you go like and comment, and vice versa? You get a bunch of people so that when you post, they go and do that. Well, if you build up, like, the whole idea is if you built up an audience for yourself, that's the engagement pod. Your email list is your engagement pod. Your Facebook group is the engagement pod, right? Like, your audience is. So when you get started, yes, it's great to be proactive with friends. And a good tip is, I'm not even mad about like calling somebody up and saying, I'm going to post this. But what you can do is when you start to get people liking stuff, to build a relationship with them, message them thoughtfully. Again, everything thoughtfully, customer-centric, value first. But when you start to have some people that are interested in certain things, send them a personal note. Like, if you post something on, like, let's say, for instance, Amber, if you hypothetically had trouble getting engagement on your content,
hypothetically, because that never happens,
and then I go and on and I post on Instagram like 5 tips to get more engagement on your content, I can send you the link to that Instagram post personally, like either in the DMs or on Messenger. We're talking to each other on email, Messenger, text, Instagram, like we're all over. But I can send you the link to that Instagram post and say, like, Amber, I know this is something you were telling me you had an issue with. Here's a link. I'd love to have you, I'd love your thoughts or insights on here so I can add more value. And like, once you get a core people in your audience that you're trying to help, even if it starts off with being your friends, like, that's totally cool. Like, I have friends that I know have this issue of content engagement. I'm going to send them the link to this episode and tell them. And that's also the value of coming out with value first, customer-centric content, is that you don't have to feel like you're selling someone. Like, I don't have to be like, oh man, all right, let me gear myself up for this sales call. I need to promote this, and I feel slimy because I don't want to be self-promotional. But like, if I know that Nick is struggling getting engagement on his content, and I just came out with this episode, of course I'm going to shoot him a note and be like, yo, man, make sure you listen to this week's episode, because I answered a couple of things we were talking about last week.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another great way to get that initial traction.
Yeah, 100%. And then this is where that abundance mindset is going to be so important, because some of my best customers and my best clients have come because I knew they had a problem that I couldn't solve, but I knew somebody else who could solve it. And I've spent so much time networking and so much time digging into other people's events and podcasts and building relationships that when somebody says to me, hey, I'm having this problem, who do you know? Or when you have that connection call, and this is even better. To me, this is the best compliment on the planet. When you have a conversation with somebody and you realize through that conversation that they would have a great connection with somebody else that you know. And you connect them, and then both of those people are like, thank you for connecting me. That's how you build real influence and real relationships with people. It's not by saying, consume my content, buy my stuff, only listen to me. It's by saying, here's valuable information. And by the way, this one has valuable information too. And this event is amazing. And you should know this person. And knowing that like Todd said, because we share the woo-woo, that's going to come back to you tenfold.
Yeah.
So,
and what we talked about last week about adjacent content marketing, when you're running out of topics, how do you come up with stuff? This is exactly the same thing too. Like when you're sharing content on social, Instagram doesn't have links, but any other social or email, you can curate content from other sources that, you know, are not direct competitors, but are adjacent to your audience's interests and where they would get value from. So share other people's content. And when you do that on social, tag them. And now you're going to be building strategic relationships that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this episode was designed to be about how to engage content. And so much of it also became about email lists and all of that, because that's one of the most important, powerful things. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, Todd, you have a course on email lists, don't you?
Yes,
and how to
we
create
do.
that.
Yes,
so where
we
can
do.
people find that?
Yeah, go to thegrowthsuite.com/free. You'll get some free guides on that kind of stuff. And then once you're in my world and I've given you some value and put some equity in the relationship, then you'll start seeing some of my content talking about the workshop. The workshop is called the Minimum Launchable Funnel. So if you are specifically interested in it, definitely hit me up in the comments here or at thegrowthsuite.com.
And if, you know, what I think is so amazing about it is that so many times we say, I just don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. But we are getting like 17 emails a day from various people. It was all of a sudden this like halo, aha, light shining moment for me when I realized all I had to do was read those 17 emails and learn how other people were doing it. So getting on somebody's email list isn't a bad thing. Yeah. It's not a bad thing to do. But Todd, I'm really excited to dig into your course. So I'm glad that I was right that you have that. In my head, I was like, if I say this and he doesn't have a course, like he better go make one fast.
The power of having an audience is even if I didn't, I'd still say I did. And if there was enough interest, then I would make it.
Exactly. Sell it and then build it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thegrowthsuite.com/MLF should take you over to info on that stuff. But also, if you want to take another dive into this stuff, podmax.co, August 27th will be great with Caleb Silver from Investopedia and Matt Faircloth from the DeRosa Group. And if you do want to check out all the great content that Amber is posting and you want to go engage with her stuff, help boost her stuff up, morethancorporate.com. That has the links to everywhere they need to go.
Yeah, it does. Morethancorporate.com. And it's finally like redone and beautiful and happy. And like, I don't know that I've ever actually loved a website before. And this was like, I'm so happy with it. So
that's great. Well, I'm happy for you. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we will see you at the next PodMax episode, and we will catch you at the next PodMax event, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
Tuned in to the On Air Brands